Dying sucks, but it's going to happen. So let's chat about what we can do to make sure that that process is smooth for those we leave behind. Sometimes life just sucks, and sometimes it freaking rocks. We will discuss all the things from family and real estate to travel and just life in general. So take a seat, or don't, you do you, and welcome to the Lambadass Podcast. Welcome to the Lambadass Podcast. Today, I'm going to talk about dying. Oh my gosh, that sounds so morbid, I know, but it's something that is going to happen to all of us. And so I feel like this is something that needs to be said. And you guys know by now, if this is your first podcast, I sell real estate. If it's not, then you know I sell real estate. And I cannot tell you how many times I have a conversation about people needing trusts. So I want to go into that. I want to go into like your directives, like what you want to happen, all the things, because these are things that you should be talking about. Now, let me backtrack. When Sweetie Pie and I had the boys, we had nothing. Like we had the kids and that was pretty much it. So I remember one time we were going on vacation. Actually, it just popped up in my memories. This is so funny. So 10 years ago, so what? No, it must have been 14 years ago. I want to say it was 14 years ago, actually. We booked a trip to Cancun 48 hours before our flight took off. Like that's how last minute this was. And then, crazy story, we got there and they upgraded us to first class for free. I don't know if Delta was just feeling frisky that day or what, but it was the best. That was the first time I'd ever flown first class. And yeah, now it's like a drug. I'm like, wait, I want to fly first class everywhere. I don't, but I would love to. Anyways, and I remember thinking, oh shit, we leave in 48 hours. Like, what happens if something happens to us? And like, where are our kids going? Like, what's going to happen? So we wrote out this rinky-dink little thing. We took it down and got it notarized at like a postal annex or something like that. And hoped and prayed that nothing would happen to us, because who knows if that piece of paper would even stand. Luckily, nothing happened to us, obviously. Thank you, Jesus. And so we're here today to talk about what I should have done instead. Let me also say that not only do you want to be able to say where your children are going, but you can also, you can get down to the nitty gritty of things, right? Like there's obviously people who make far more money than me that I'm sure have way more intricate trusts than I do. And I have two adult children. So it's kind of like, well, and our oldest is 25. So it's like, okay, listen, you know what to do. Like we're splitting everything equally, buy each other out, do what you have to do. And then just so you guys know, as a fun fact, and my kids know this as well, I put a clause in our trust where if my children fight about the bullshit that I left them, their portion of the trust gets donated to Chalk Hospital. So at the end of the day, they don't screw it up for everybody. They just screw it up for themselves and they get absolutely nothing. So boys, I dare you to fight about the shit that I have, the shit that I worked hard for. Like I dare you. They know this, by the way. So if you die and you have, let's say a will, let's say you have nothing. What happens, at least in the state of California, I don't know if this happens everywhere. I would have to do a quick Google search. I guess it doesn't really matter because I only live in California. But what happens is if you have nothing in writing, then it essentially goes to what we call probate. Probate is the nastiest word ever. Like you never want anything to go to probate. What happens is it goes to the state, and the state of California, in my example here, would determine where my property is going, where my kids are going, who's getting what, and all the things. Now, love it or hate it, I don't care politically where you align. In case you didn't know, California is ran like a shit show. So if they can't even run the state, which is quite literally what they're paid to do, for them to decide what's going to happen to my family with my items is something that I just did not want to gamble. If you are okay with the way that things are, you do you. For me, that was not going to fly. So that's what happens if you have nothing. Now, let's say you have a will, and wills are generally drawn up by attorneys. You can also go on like LegalZoom and you can input a few things and stuff and they'll throw things together. It does tend to be a little bit cheaper. Oh, bless. Are you sneezing or are you coughing? It's okay. Poor Billy almost died over there. See, we're talking about dying and Billy's like coughing his poor head off. So anyways, if you have a will, your items and things still go to probate. However, the state will generally follow what you put in this will. So again, you can go through LegalZoom, you can go to an attorney. LegalZoom is going to be the cheapest way to go, but again, we are firm believers if you get what you pay for. And so I don't know, maybe draw it up on LegalZoom and then pay an attorney to read it over, see what things need to be changed if you really need an inexpensive way to go about it. The best way, in my opinion, is a trust. A trust, you name the beneficiaries of the trust. So like you say, these are the beneficiaries. These are the people who are going to benefit from this trust. And then you have a trustee. The trustee makes sure that the trust is being followed. My dad, for example, was the trustee on my grandfather's trust, and he got a small little portion payment wise just to have to sit here and kind of work things out with everybody. But the beneficiaries was my grandpa's. He's not my grandfather by blood. It's just he's just been in my life my whole life and all the things. So he was my grandpa. But anyways, so when he passed away, my dad made sure that the trust was followed the way that the trust was written. So you can be a trustee and not a beneficiary. That's totally a thing. You can be a beneficiary without being a trustee. So it was kind of easy, if you will, for David and I, because when we bought our property, our son was almost 18 anyways, and our oldest is not my blood oldest, right? Like he's my bonus baby, and but I love him. So like we never use the word, he's my son. But it's funny because he does things or he says things and I'm like, oh, there I am. So he is so much like me in the sense of like, everything will be fair. My mom growing up was very fair with us children. I remember a time where my mom was like, hey, I took your sister shopping, so I need to take you shopping too. Like, let's go get you a couple pairs of pants or something. And we'd go out. Or I'd be like, Mom, I don't need the pants. It's fine. Like, it's no big deal. I never felt that I was less than or better than any of my siblings. And I never want my children to ever feel that way. So it's like, listen, take everything and split everything 4 ways. However, different families are different. So if you need to choose different ways to do things, that's fine too. You can even put it in your trust where, the kids don't benefit from the trust until they're X years old. And then once they're X years old, they have to have these stipulations and stuff. We didn't necessarily do that because I have confidence that my son will be able to divvy up the funds according to how we would want them divvied up. Unfortunately, I know a lot of you probably don't have that. But prior to my son being on the trustee, or if he decides that he doesn't want to do it, my dad is going to oversee it, assuming I pass, David and I pass before my parents do. When my kids were little, my mom and dad were going to get my kids. And my parents are young. So my parents are only 20 and 21 years older than me. So my parents being super young, and I had my last one when I was 26. So everybody was really young in that situation. I remember my sister was really upset because God forbid anything happens to my sister, I get her kids. So she was like, why wouldn't you give me your kids? She was so upset. And I said, love, it's because my sister's military and I wanted my children to have the stability of their home and, doing the things that they are. And my sister had her own kids that are much younger than mine. Her youngest is 6, mine is 15. So, they're just totally different places in life. So when I explained that to her, she was like, okay, I get it. I'm like, it's not that I wouldn't trust you with my children at all. And it's not that you wouldn't give them a good life. It's mom and dad would just be the easier choice. So sometimes you have to weigh those options. I have a very good girlfriend of mine as well that anything happens to her and her husband, she asked me, can my kids, go with you? Absolutely. Yes, of course. So you want to make sure that you find people in your life, especially if you have young children, or children in general, anybody under the age of 18. I mean, they go to the state too. Like they would go to, I don't think it's CPS. I don't think it's Child Protective Services, but it's some form of like a holding for them. And listen, your children are little and they have just lost both of their parents and now they're having to go live with a stranger. Like, talk about traumatic experiences. So to make this as smooth as possible for a shitty situation, please make sure you do this. Say who the kids are going to go to. Where do they go? What do you want them to do? How old do you want them to be when they get the money? All those things. The biggest thing, especially on the side of real estate that I see, is when it goes to probate takes a long time. Not always, but most of the time it does. I have had my friend Paige on here before. She specializes in probate sales. She works with probate attorneys to where she has to sell these homes and these properties for these people. And it's not always a good situation. You know, families fight when people die, and they fight over the stupidest shit. Like, they want your china set, really, the china that I never ate off of, like, throw it away for all I care. I don't care. There's also things that you can put in there as far as your wishes when you die. I told my children, and I'm throwing these ideas out here for you guys too, in case this isn't something that you've thought about. I know that this is morbid. I understand that. But I think by bringing it to light, like, you do the best that you can. When my kids were little, they would always ask me, Mommy, what happens if you die? Kids are inquisitive. They want to know those things. And I would always look at them and I would be like, what? If I die, I'm going to go live with Jesus. In our family, we are a Christian household. We believe in Jesus. We love the Lord. Like, so I would say here, I cuss a little, but I love Jesus. I've said that before. You guys should know this. You know, so I'm like, I'm going to be in heaven, sweetheart. I'm going to be waiting for you. And when you get there, I'll see you then. Oh, okay. It was almost because I was so secure in my answer that they were able to say, oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'll just see her when I see her. Now, if you are not religious, if you don't believe in a God or any of that stuff, whatever, like, you need to think about these excuses or these reasonings that you can give your children so that they know that A, you're going to be okay, and B, more importantly, that they're going to be okay. My kids were more concerned about me, where I was going. As they get older, then they want to know, well, shit, if something happens to you, like, then where do I go? Like, they're not thinking about themselves when they're little and they're 3 years old and they're asking what happens when you die. So you want to make sure that you're putting them with people who are going to raise them the way that you would want them to be raised and do the things that you would want them to be doing. There's no doubt in my mind that if, God forbid, anything happened to David or myself, my parents would have taken amazing care of my children, and they totally would turn out to be wonderful members of society. That, at the end of the day, is the goal. But now that I have older kids, it's easier. It's like, sell everything and split it 4 ways. Or, you know, if Carson wants to buy the house, then you buy the kids out. Like, it's nice in knowing, because we've been talking about it for so long, like, what they know what to expect when the time comes. And hopefully this shit doesn't go down for like 80 years, people. But assuming I'm not going to live until I'm 120, you know, I have to assume that that's probably not going to happen, and I'm probably going to die a little sooner than that. When it happens, at least my children are going to know what I wanted done. At least they know I'm going to see them again. And that's all that I want them to really worry about. The other thing that David and I put in our trust, going back to my advice to you guys, is we want to be cremated. I know that that's not a thing for everybody. I know that there are some very, very, very super religious people who think that that is not the way that you are supposed to go. That's okay. Do what is best for you. For us, I want to be cremated, and I want my ashes to be given. I want them like in a vial, and I want them to be given to each of my kids. And I want them to do whatever the hell they want with those ashes. If they want to keep them, they can keep them. If they want to press me and make me into a diamond, I can't think of anything more glamorous that I'd like to be than a diamond in my, how lovely would that be, Billy, right? Like, make me a big old diamond, like whatever it is that you want to do. Ideally, though, I would love for them to spread at least some of my ashes in places where they think of me. So if they think of me in Paris, when they go with their kids and their family to Paris, take a little bit of me and sprinkle me there. If they think of me at Disney World, okay, side note, you're not allowed to do this, by the way. You're not allowed to sprinkle ashes at Disney World. Like, you can like get kicked out for like ever. So that's probably not the best example, but you get the gist of what I'm saying, right? Like, wherever they think of me the most is where I want them to spread my ashes if they want to. And if they want to keep me, that's fine too. My dad, when his really good friend passed away, he had like it looked like a cigar tube, for lack of a better explanation, and it very well could have been. And every time he would get in his truck, he kept it like in his Jeep, he kept it in like the left corner and it was just so cool, because every time my mom would get in, my mom would be like, "Hey, Steve." She'd lean over and go, "Hey, Steve." So, those are the things. Like, I want my kids to be happy and live their life. So if I can take something off their plate, when they're going through the grieving process and it's stressful, and what are we going to do and how are we going to do things, like, I want to make sure that they're set up. And here's the thing too, you guys, even if you have nothing, you still have something. You have your kids, you have your dog, like, you have assets in the bank, you have your vehicle. Like, Where do you want all of those things to go? And again, I've had friends who are like, well, if you do drugs and do this and that, then you're not getting the money. Like, it's going to be sitting in an escrow account and it'll wait until you're clean and sober, or you're this and that. So you can even come up with instances, or, hey, if something, God forbid, happens to one of my kids, like, how does that then get split up, and where do I want their stuff going? Like, it's kind of a broad spectrum of what you can do. I was asking my parents the other day, I have a girlfriend of mine, and her parents also had her very, very, very young. I'm not going to name names because I don't know if she would even care if I'm saying this, but it's like she has really, really young parents and grandparents. So it's like, okay, well, the person who's probably going to benefit the most from any of this is going to be her actual children. We've talked about it before. We've laughed about it. It's actually quite funny. I asked my parents, I said, as a grandparent, did you leave anything to the grandkids? And my dad goes, no. And I said, okay. I said, I kind of think about that. We were actually in Santa Barbara when I was talking to my parents about it for Mother's Day. And I said, I've been thinking about that more because, as Jacob and Ashlyn, celebrate their second year of being married this month, like, they're probably going to start having babies and stuff. And naturally, I want my grandbabies to be taken care of too. And my dad looked at me and he goes, Lauren, like, Jacob is going to do what's best for his kids. And if that's using some of the money that you leave or the assets that you leave and giving it to them, well, then so be it. And it's like, oh, that's a good point. And just as a sidebar too, I love my daughter-in-laws. I say laws with an S. I only have one, but I'm going to love all of them because I want to be the mother-in-law that I possibly, like, the best mother-in-law that I possibly can be. And so, I was talking to Ashlyn and I was like, if anything happens to me, like, what is it that you want? Like, go through my purses. I have nice designer handbags. Go through those. That's a big thing for me. Go through those. If shoes are a big thing with you, go over your shoes. Who do you want your jewelry to go to? Handbags just seem to be my thing. So, we talk about these things all the time because it's like, okay, cool. Well, now we're all sitting here at the dinner table. You heard me tell Ashlyn she could pick from my handbags. Let her pick from my handbags. Like, do whatever it is that makes you happy. So I tell you all of this just to give you an idea of what Sweetie Pie and I have done. Obviously, you can do different. And actually, if you guys have done things a little differently, or if your parents have passed and they did something that you thought was a great idea, I would love to hear from you. Please, actually, if you're listening to this on like Apple Podcasts or I don't know, wherever the hell else we are. Where are we? Just Apple Podcasts? Spotify. Can you comment on Spotify? Goes to show how much I know. Reviews? Okay. No, well, I mean, you could leave me a great review. That'd be awesome. But if you could go like on YouTube, I also do post tidbits on social media. So like on Facebook and Instagram, if you find my pages and there's something that you are like, you have to do this, please comment because I am here for all the ideas. Again, it's such a morbid situation, but at the end of the day, we're all going to go through it. And if we can sit here and really do our best to, confront it head on, I think that it's just all around a better situation. Then our children feel better, or whoever, about leaving things and being gone and what we would have wanted. I don't want my kids to question themselves every day if they make me proud and if they did what I wanted done. Like, we're good, love. Like, we are so good. I'm proud of you now more than ever. And so as the time progresses, I'm even going to be more proud of you, even if it has to be watching from heaven. So get those trusts in order. I know that those can be a little bit pricey. They can be upwards of like a couple $1,000. But there's always a way around it, and find a way. Like, make sure you get this done. If you need any recommendations for trust attorneys, I have two specifically that I love. I would work with either one of them. I'm happy to give out any referrals, but find somebody local to you. Ask around, hey, who did your trust? Did they do a good job? Was there anything that you would change? Get your properties into the trusts and make sure that if, God forbid, anything happens to you, not only will your assets be protected from the grimy hands of the government, but your children and those who are you're leaving your assets to will be taken care of and know what to do. Thank you so much for being here for this morbid conversation. I love all of you, and I hope you guys have a great week.